Welcome to my channel. I'm Janet Yung, and in my channel I share about Feng Shui, Bazi, entrepreneurship as well as personal growth, especially in the areas of communication, motivation and success. In today's episode, I would like to touch on what I just done in terms of a survey of how people would like to overcome mind, which is mental, body, which is physical, spiritual, which is soul, in terms of how they should be looking at overcoming their internal struggles, especially when moving forward to period 9, which will start in 2024. And I really thank you for all your votes and support. It's overwhelmingly a vote for overcoming mental health in terms of the mind, internal struggles, the votes, both on Telegram as well as YouTube. Therefore, for today's episode, I would like to focus from a Bazi perspective. How do we see the triggers in terms of the issues coming out mentally, causing us a lot of anguish and emotional trauma? Without further ado, let's move on to the next segment where I'll touch on this topic. As all of you know, this year is the year of the ox. And when we talk about the year of the ox in terms of a clash animal, it is those born with the goat within their charts. And I covered in another video in terms of overcoming emotional trauma, clashes, what it means. If you have not seen that video, please click on the link that I'm showing here, or I'll be leaving the videos that I mentioned in today's episode in the video description. Do remember to visit the video description and click on the relevant links to learn more. What I'd like to touch on today is the concept of what some would call Tri-Persecuting Clash. Now, what is Tri-Persecuting Clash? It involves not just one animal branch within your chart. It usually involves actually 3 animal branches. And these animal branches can appear either within your natal Bazi chart. It can also appear in the 10-year luck pillar that triggers this clash, or it can basically come in terms of the years pillar. So let's look at the first set of Tri-Persecuting Clash. The first set involves those with the animal branches of the ox, which is this year's animal branch. And if you have the goat within your chart, then there will be a clash like I mentioned earlier on. And the other branch that is involved is those born with the dog, either in the natal chart, or they're going through a 10-year luck pillar that has got the dog, or they're going through an annual cycle, for instance, with the presence of a dog as well as a goat within their chart. Then this year, the year of 2021, the ox comes in. So this Tri-Persecuting Clash involves these 3 animal branches: the ox, the goat, and the dog. Now, what does it mean by Tri-Persecuting Clash? For a lot of beginner practitioners, just like when I first started learning Bazi, it is actually quite scary to know that you have a Tri-Persecuting Clash. All it states is basically a clash, and therefore there will be emotions involved and things will not be smooth. But how do you overcome it? Now, from my last 16 years of experience, I will be sharing based on my own personal experience, plus the experience of my clients, in the hopes of helping you understand this Tri-Persecuting Clash a little better, as well as how you can overcome it. It's not a doom or gloom. It depends on what we do when we actually face with such a clash. If you look at the 3 animal branches of the ox, the goat, and the dog, all of them are with the earth element branches. The earth element generally talks about nurturing, caring, being sentimental, having attachments. So when you do go through the ox, goat, and dog Tri-Persecuting Clash, whether is it in your chart permanently, or the 10 years, or just for that year, what you'll be experiencing is during this particular period of time, you will generally be feeling a lot of times being too emotionally attached, too sentimentally attached, such that you put in all your heart and soul in terms of helping someone, because when we talk about the earth element, it's nurturing someone. And when that happens, likelihood you are expecting some kind of return. So what does it mean by return? Because you help and nurture people. Therefore, what you expect is at least some kindness, some thanks, some reciprocation of efforts, or at least a thank you from them. However, what can happen, instead of a thank you or a word of appreciation, people may be blaming you, people may not appreciate your efforts, and therefore you will feel that you are unhappy. However, because of this tri-persecuting clash, there is this emotional attachment that you cannot let go, causing you to go even further into the downward spiral. So what can we do about this entire situation? Now, a lot of times when we look at mental health issues, whether is it PTSD, whether people are suffering from stress that leads to health issues later on, a lot of times it comes through because of a certain kind of trauma. And that trauma can be because when you are growing up, you experience childhood trauma, either because of the relationship with your parents, sibling issues, school issues, and because it's earth, so a lot of times it's relationship as well. So how to overcome these particular issues, I will share with you in part 2 of this particular video itself. Now let's go on and talk about the next set of tri-persecuting clash. The next set of tri-persecuting clash involves also 3 animals. And the first one is those with the tiger within their charts. The next animal sign is snake. And the next animal sign is actually monkey. It's interesting that after the year of the ox, next year 2022, which is the year of the tiger, if you have a monkey, then there will be a direct clash in your chart. But if you have both the monkey and the snake, or you are going through a 10-year luck pillar of one of these animals, then what will happen is there will be also a tri-persecuting clash as well. Now, these tri-persecuting clash in terms of combination is a lot more towards that of the fire element. So fire is really about optimism, the pursuit of happiness. Fire is also about impatience and also being very emotional. Now, if you have at least 2 of these animal branches, meaning the monkey or the snake, either within your natal chart or one of it is within your chart, the other is in your 10-year luck pillar, and the tiger year comes in next year, then next year will be a year that you will be experiencing a lot of emotional upheavals. And you may have already started experiencing it from the month of August, because this is the month of the monkey, and it will trigger the start and initiate the emotional trauma that you have that will come in next year. So you may already have a glimpse of some of these emotional upheavals that you will be going through in the year 2022. Similarly, like I mentioned for the tri-persecuting clash, for those with the ox, the goat, and the dog, the month of July was the month of the goat. So it was one of the most challenging months if you had either 2 of the 3 animal branches within your chart and then having a trigger in the month of July with the goat month. Similar to the ox, goat, and dog tri-persecuting clash, those with the monkey, snake, and tiger tri-persecuting clash would similarly be going through a lot of emotional struggles. But this is more from the perspective of because you are trying to look for happiness, and that happiness may not necessarily exist within you. Therefore, maybe you went through childhood trauma and you are looking for fatherly love, motherly love, or certain relationship things. Therefore, you need validation and you're looking for the relationship in terms of making up for your happiness. But in the end, what you are faced with is a lot of disappointment, therefore causing you a lot of emotional trauma again. So for both sets of tri-persecuting clash, when you go through it or you have it permanently within your charts, it is really about emotional upheaval, about a lot of feelings and attachment in terms of expectation or needing the validation for love, for recognition, for a good relationship. And therefore, oftentimes you plunge into this downward spiral, or some may term it black hole, of not sure what to do and then having so much stress when the triggers come in terms of the activation either of the animal branch, the 10-year luck pillar itself. However, if you are able to understand this and following some of the tips that I'm going to share with you, you may be able to dwell a lot more into your subconscious mind, understand it, and be awakened to the fact that happiness is an inner job. It is not about relying on external parties' validation, recognition, or reassurance or appreciation for you to know your own personal power, for you to build your inner happiness. How do I know that? Well, because I have one Tri-Persecuting Clash that has been activated in my 20s and in the year 2016, and also because this is the month of the monkey, and last month it was goat. I have also a goat in my chart. I have the tiger, I have the snake. So I have gone through all this. I know it's not easy for you to get through it, but it can be done, because you must remember, even though we cannot change the influences that come within our charts, we cannot change our characteristics. However, we can learn to manage our emotions. We can learn to manage our response, because whatever events, whatever external happening we cannot change, but we can manage our emotions, our thoughts, and therefore the actions that we will take that will produce the necessary outcome that we are looking at. And in part 2 of this video, I'll be sharing with you my experience of how I've overcome, or I would say this is a journey. It's not necessarily about overcoming, it's about facing it one step at a time. And then because of the realization that you are able to overcome these obstacles, that hey, you realize that you can utilize your unique experience to help other people as well. Like what I'm doing right now, sharing on this video on how you can overcome some of these struggles that you are facing internally. Let's start with tip number 1 on how you can basically overcome this. I think number 1, to know what you are experiencing and how you can overcome it, is having that awareness. And if you have not gotten your Bazi chart, please go ahead to bazicalculator.janetyong.com to get your free Bazi chart, so that you can chart and see whether do you have the relevant animal branches that I mentioned earlier on. So once you have that particular awareness, I think it is crucial to know that if you are taking a certain step, that you should not generally be expecting too much of a return when you are going through this Tri-Persecuting Clash. You may not want to put in your heart and soul into something and therefore get emotionally attached and therefore expect a return in terms of appreciation, a thank you or something. By having that awareness, you can still choose to help. You can still choose to do what you want to do. But be aware, it may not be reciprocal in terms of the returns or rewards that you are trying to get. That's basically tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is what I found pretty effective in terms of examining my internal turmoil, what caused it. And it is interesting that it took a crisis like COVID for us and for many people who are on this channel watching my video to really try and understand what's really happening and turning inwards and understanding ourselves a little bit more. Like I mentioned a little earlier on, a lot of times these mental issues, internal struggles may come about because of our childhood, in terms of trauma, in terms of relationship issues, either with our parents, with our siblings, with our classmates, maybe with a mentor. So one thing that is crucial is to basically dig deep and reflect upon what has happened over the years. What is causing you this internal struggle? So I'll give you an example. In my case, it was more of a abandonment issue when in my childhood my father left us, and because of that my mother had to single-handedly bring up 4 children. Although my father did come back once in a while, but I think a lot of the emotional and financial struggle and burden landed on my mom. And because of that, though she was very strong and she was able to pull us out and still provide for us such that we are able to graduate in our studies, and my siblings and I are doing okay right now, it also took a toll in terms of her temperaments. Therefore, growing up, though I knew I should be showing and showering love towards my mom, but because of her temperaments, we had to temper how we actually work with her in terms of relationship, in terms of communication. And when I went through the 10-year luck pillar when I was in my 20s, or when she passed away in the year 2016, it was a lot of emotional trauma. And at that point in time, when you do not understand, you'll be wondering how come you have those stress moments with the person you had issues with. And how do you know? If you remember, I covered in a lot of my videos the different pillars of our natal chart represents different parts or different relationship issues. So whenever it happens, examine that animal branch location and you'll be able to tell who likelihood you'll be experiencing that relationship issue with. And because of this abandonment issue, I have always been looking for validation or the father figure that was missing in my life. And because of that, I often plunge head on into situations where I cannot pull myself out of, expecting returns, and when I don't get it, I get traumatized emotionally. During this COVID period, I think it helped because I had more time to calm my mind, focus on looking internally what is happening. Because remember, I mentioned I have a goat in my chart, so the ox here causes a clash, and instead of trying to be emotional about the whole thing, I started to look inwards. And similarly, Tiger is going to come, so August triggered another whole set of issues for me. But I'm glad to say that the next step that I took, which I'm going to share with you, helped tremendously. So tip number 3, after looking internally and understanding that issue, I think it is crucial that you then do deep breathing, or if you are into meditation, go into meditation. First, calm your thoughts, okay? Because by calming your mind and focusing on the breathing, you will then be able to be observing the circumstances that has brought you to where you are, especially when you look internally and reflect on the past years that you have gone through, on your life journey itself, as to what were the repeating patterns that you keep throwing yourself into that cause you emotional trauma and relationship issues, internal struggle every single time. Once you recognize that pattern, then it is important for you to take a step back and say, hey, do I really need that? Am I good enough such that I do not need the validation, the recognition? Because happiness is an inner job, correct? By understanding that and building happiness based on who you are and how you choose to respond, that would be more important rather than seeking validation, recognition, and reassurance from external party, because you cannot control their reactions. And if you cannot control their reactions, but at the same time you expect a certain kind of reaction, then of course you're going to have a lot of turmoil and struggle, correct? When I talk about Tri-Persecuting Clash, it's really a lot about inner works, examining inner turmoils, and at the same time understanding that only by digging deep and understanding that happiness is an inner work. And when you are happy within, you will basically be emitting happiness in terms of energy outwards. And therefore, you have people responding and reciprocating in terms of happiness and wanting to have a good relationship with you. So that's really what it is you should be looking at from a Tri-Persecuting Clash perspective. Once you have done that, you'll find that you'll be able to break away from a lot of your thought patterns, because you know to put a stop to your thought patterns by practicing the breathing meditations that I've shared in many videos. If you have not, please refer to the link that I'm pointing here or the video links in the video description itself. Then the next part you should then be looking at is how do you break through those barriers and how do you overcome those obstacles. That's basically the tip about how you can look inwards and overcome these obstacles. Tip number 4, it's really about avoiding the sectors that may throw you further downwards in your downward spiral when you're trying to pull yourself up. So every year I will cover about the auspicious and inauspicious sectors. If you have not watched that, click on this link or go to the video description to understand which sectors you should be avoiding annually to prevent anguish, to prevent aggressiveness. Like the number 3 argument star can cause you to be overly sentimental, thinking too much, being unhappy. The number 7 star can then be being aggressive as well. Try to spend time in the auspicious sectors of the number 1, number 4, number 6 and number 8. So now that you have gone through the tips in terms of tip number 1 to number 4 of how to first identify whether you have that Tri-Persecuting Clash in your chart, doing the inner works, being aware, and therefore after that taking the steps to overcome and break free of the barriers in your mind, the next great step that you can take that I would really like you to do is to start helping others, because each of us go through specific lessons in life. If we are able to learn from it, we can help others in it as well. As you are helping others in it, you will clear even more of the internal struggle and turmoil that you have, and then be able to move forward. And when you do that, you'll be looking back at life, understanding why you went through specific lessons, because at the end of the day, if you did not go through it, you will not be able to help others with it. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I've received many requests both from clients and also YouTube followers about whether do I run courses on Feng Shui and Bazi. I think there are many courses in the market that teaches you the theories of Bazi and Feng Shui. What I would like to focus on is really the practical sides of applying Bazi and Feng Shui. So I'm looking at probably creating a course that will help you apply Bazi and Feng Shui theories and applications to help other people through this period that is so difficult, especially from an internal struggle perspective, as we move towards period 9 in the year 2024. And at the moment in time right now, I'm gathering interest. I'll be leaving a link in the video description, as well as you can click on this link that I'm showing here. If you are interested to sign up for the course, please register your interest so that I know what you are interested in and therefore build something towards it. And when it's time to release the course dates itself and what will be covered, I will share more with you in my upcoming videos. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's video, and in next week's video I will cover more on some of the combinations and clashes that causes mental health issues, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.